All right.
Is it fine?
Yeah. No. It looks fine. I'm just getting used to it.
We're not going to use the S word again.
I meant like a leaf, dude. I don't know what you were thinking about. Like,
I've never heard someone refer to a leaf in that way.
All right.
What's up, everyone? I'm Alex Lieberman.
Yo, this is Jesse Pujji.
And this is The Crazy Ones. Don't you just love the sweet sound of success? That's the sound of another sale on Shopify, a tiny business dream becoming a reality. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're selling vintage concert posters or handmade Fabergé eggs, Shopify makes selling online and in person as simple as saying cha-ching. Packed with industry-leading tools, Shopify gives you complete control over your business and your brand without having to learn any new skills in design or code. And get this, Shopify covers tons of sales channels. You can even sell across TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. New to selling? Shopify offers 24/7 help and an extensive business course library so you'll feel supported every step of the way. Now it's your turn to get serious about selling and try Shopify today. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/crazyones, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/crazyones. Shopify.com/crazyones. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Crazy Ones, the best damn startup show in the world. And today's a special day because it is the second time ever that I have met my co-host, Jesse Pujji, in person. And now we actually get to spend an extended period of time together because I think last time I saw you was at Left Lane Conference. And we saw each other for 2 minutes. Honestly, I didn't even remember how tall you were. So every time I see someone for the first time, that is always my first observation, is how different their height is relative to what I expected.
Yeah, because we're all eye to eye in the normal world.
Exactly.
But dude, I'm here in person. Before we start anything, this is such a cool office.
You like it?
You feel proud?
Yeah, I mean, I can't take credit for any of the office that, Dan, who we were just with, and Matt, our COO, were the orchestrators of this thing. But
but for everyone listening, I got a tour. It's 2 gorgeous floors, super lit up in the middle of a Flatiron in New York, and these studios are just amazing. I mean, I recently I've been working out of a co-working space in St. Louis, and I managed to get my hands on a sublease, and it's 5,000 square feet. It's 50 desks. Makes no sense. I have 5 people in St. Louis, but I had this night where I couldn't sleep because I was so excited about having a space.
Totally.
Whether I was going to have happy hours there, so it's anyway, one part of the entrepreneurial journey. I don't know, seeing here, I feel the energy of dude, you created this.
Yeah, there is something incredibly special about having your own space for the first time. Like, our first office was a WeWork, and there's nothing wrong with the co-working space, but it was hard, at least for us in the early days, to really put our stamp on it.
Yeah.
The first time we got our space that we had to actually do interior design ourselves, I realized that I'm never going to be an interior designer, but then it was it was an incredibly special thing to feel like, your professional version of home.
Yeah, but keep it, man. You walk into this. This is the thing you created.
Yeah.
This is your little newsletter that, holy shit, there's, 100 desks and 50 heartbeats running around the place and T-shirts. It's just cool. I get, this is to me that inspiring
I can
moment
tell
where
how
I'm just
lit up you are about it.
This is so cool. This is a real thing. You made a real thing.
No, I feel super lucky to just be able to come into this space and do what I do. It's awesome. But I'm honestly so excited for you to be here. Obviously, we've been able to build a relationship together mostly over Zoom and text and calls, but there's just something, no matter what anyone says about this remote world we live in, to feel someone's energy in front of you, to see their body language. So I'm just excited to jam with you for the next hour or so.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I know we have a few things we want to talk about. My content agency that started as an idea 4 weeks ago, that's now a business, but we haven't incorporated yet. We don't have a name. We don't have a logo. We can talk about that. I know you incorporated a new business. And then we just wanted to jam about different ideas within the world of AI. What do you want to start with?
Let's talk about AI.
Okay.
It's a little nauseating how much it's on Twitter.
It's exhausting.
Every thread is I did this with this thing. It's super cool. I think OpenAI is a huge deal. Sam Altman's from St. Louis, in case you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Now you know.
Well, it feels like to me, what I was saying to Dan before we started the episode is it feels like 2 months ago, no one knew about any of this. If anything, people are asking, what is ChatGPT? And then the speed by which it went from what is ChatGPT to not just everyone knows about it. And I say everyone in a very nuanced way. Everyone as in like in our world. I still think I saw some stat about the number of people in different age groups in the US that have tried ChatGPT. And the numbers were way higher than I thought it actually was.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how it's not just become like mainstream attention, but actually like products now. Every product is leveraging ChatGPT or AI. And so a question in my head is ChatGPT and what OpenAI has built something that is truly novel in the world of AI? Like if you were like a researcher in AI, would you say this is novel, or is this literally just like the podcast equivalent of Serial, the show that just put kind of a category onto the map?
Yeah. I think it's genuinely novel because Microsoft doesn't run around making $10 billion investments out of nowhere. And if Google had something that could be in a similar vein to it, it would be out into the world.
Yep.
Right. So because it's getting users, and there was that chart that showed how fast different things got to 1 billion users.
insane.
And it was like, cell phones took probably 10 years to get to 1 billion users. The internet took 7 years. Facebook took 4 years or 8 years or whatever. And then this took like a year or 6 months or something.
I think it was even shorter. It's crazy.
And so I think there's something real there. I think just like any hype cycle, the amount people talk about Facebook ads is very little today. It's $100 billion business and still growing, and they just crushed earnings. People, yeah, that's old stuff. Like this new thing is probably not generating all that much revenue. It's not yet a big business, but people can feel the hype cycle. Well, what's your take? Do you think it's a hype? Like, do you think it's real? Do you think it's going to be a game-changing?
My view is there are already really interesting things that you can do with it, but a lot of this stuff still is kind of janky in nature.
Right.
Like, for example, before this, I went to one of the tens of thousands of tools that helps you spin up a website in 60 seconds, where you put in the name of the company, what you do, and it spins it up. And it was like a pretty shitty website.
Right.
And so I think a lot of tools are in that category right now. But there are some tools that are doing genuinely novel things. The reason I think about it a little bit differently than the Facebook ad business is because this feels way more like electricity.
Or like the internet.
Yeah, exactly. This feels like when we're talking about AI, we're talking about the internet. We're not going to use the words AI like 20 years from now, because it will just be how everything operates. And I was thinking earlier today, like, there's these massive businesses that have been built on the back of Shopify and Shopify's app store. Like, Keith Boy's whole business with, was it Open Store, is rolling up these apps. I was thinking, like, if you think that OpenAI is going to be multiples of Shopify, Shopify is a $60 billion company right now. I think OpenAI is $30 billion. You would have to think that the plugins to ChatGPT, which are gaining some popularity now as they're opening it up, is going to be multiples of that. And so I think it's really interesting to see the plugins that are being integrated to ChatGPT.
Yeah, I have a good buddy who's a big software investor, like a public markets investor. And it's funny because one thing, the cool thing about being an investor is they have a unique perch. I mean, they see everything. Mm-hmm. And I still live in my world and in his world. And so, like, I remember 5 years ago or 4 years ago, he's like, Slack is dead, Jesse. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, he's like, Microsoft Teams. And I started making fun of him. Yeah. I was like, dude, what's wrong with you? What are you talking about? And the truth is, I'm in my world of techie, startup-y people, and Slack is the thing everybody uses. The idea that Microsoft... And I don't know if you saw those charts that went around recently, but apparently Teams is like 5 times the size of Slack now.
That's wild.
Because Microsoft owns the enterprise, and he's like, they're going to price it to zero, and now Salesforce bought this company, and there's like a real challenge with it. And so but the reason I'm saying that is because I think it's important, at least for everyone, to get out of their own bubbles for a second.
Totally.
And when you get out of your bubble, you start to see things probably in a very, very different light around what's possible. And so he was talking to me about this, and he's just like, call centers are getting, like, there's tons of pricing pressure hitting tons of software businesses because of AI. There's literally call centers that are now like gutting their entire teams, their human teams. So he sees things from a really high perch.
Yeah.
And when he shares things with me, now I don't make fun of him because, he's been right many times. I'm like, oh God, this is going to be a real a real impact on the world.
I agree with that. I also think, to the point you're making about it feeling nauseating, I just feel like, and I could be wrong, I just feel exhausted by it and almost overwhelmed because I feel like I'm disadvantaged because I don't have a technical background. Like, I just feel like if I come up with an idea with an AI right now and I decide to spin it up, by the time I've spun it up, someone has already done it and they will have done it better. Like, that is the general feeling I have. And I don't know if that's the right assumption, but it's funny as you talk about just like these different like software tools with AI. There was something I was looking at earlier. It's called Be Human. Have you heard of this company? So basically, you know, a big part of like marketing automation is like email. You can an email templates with merge tags. What this does is you can do it with video. So you send like a sales pitch, say on Kahani or any of your businesses, and you say, "Hey, so and so," and it uses AI to create
Multiple versions of that.
thousands of versions.
I love it.
So you can bring merge tags to video now, where for every person you send it to, you can customize it to their name, their company, their position, which is pretty wild.
Let's talk about, I want to talk about the way to think about this, maybe top down.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk, let's like come up with some ideas.
Yeah, let's do it. I wrote some down.
So top down, you know, there's always this concept of like horizontal and vertical solutions, right? So you've kind of got like, if you think of it like a cake, OpenAI is the, like what people think of as the API data layer. Maybe Google or somebody else who has a lot of money and a lot of engineering will be able to compete with that. But like, man, they're out pretty far to a start. And they obviously, you know, Sam's a super smart guy. He picked, and he wants to work on huge problems. So he picked the thing that like, if you can win it, is the $1 trillion company. They own it. I mean, they're really there. Then like you also have this concept of like, you know, they say like vertical versus horizontal solutions. And so, like, you know, horizontal solution may be like one of the more successful companies. I think their $1 billion valuation is Jasper.
Yep.
So they were one of the earliest to be. They were like kind of ahead of the curve. They built this system of like kind of essentially marketing, the use case of marketing being solved by, you know.
So you consider that vertical or horizontal solution?
Vertical.
Yeah. So it's basically focusing on a specific category
and solving the problem, leveraging AI.
Yep.
And like in theory, I think like OpenAI says, I don't want to go solve how e-commerce works or customer service or, you know, and I'm mixing things together. There's vertical, like industry verticals, but then there's like functional verticals, right? There's customer service. There's probably banking.
Yeah, they're like, I want to be a toll on the highway.
Yeah, and maybe actually the best way for us to think about it is there's a matrix of industries and then solutions.
Yep.
Like the way you solve customer service for banking may actually be very different than the way you solve it for McDonald's, or every other vertical has a different solution. And, you know, I think one of the challenges people have to be careful of when building on top of OpenAI is like, if your solution's too horizontal, they're eventually going to eat your lunch.
Yeah.
Right. And let me caveat this by saying, like, I'm always of the mind of like, if you're listening to this, you want to get your head in the game and go start something, you'll create some value, you'll figure it out.
Yep.
So don't hesitate because you're afraid of differentiation at this stage. But like, think about the map in your head for where it's going to go. I think the most successful companies, somewhat obvious, or not obviously, but it will take one square of that matrix. Like I said, customer service for banking, and go, that is a very specific solution. I'm going to have the best models. I'm going to use OpenAI, but I'm going to really, really make it so that it'd be hard for anyone else for this to work out of the box.
Yep.
Financial services has unique terms. They have unique issues. They have different times of day, and really program the software to solve that problem. And I think that's going to be, that map is going to get built out. And I think a lot of the companies who are doing it today, what I've seen at least, feel horizontal-ish, or like a very thin layer, essentially, a thin vertical layer on top of it. And they'll just have to get better and better over time as they double and triple down on it.
Well, like even a question in my head, just using Jasper as the example, is I'm trying to understand. Jasper has picked, let's call it marketing or like content marketing within any vertical of business you could do. And they said, using AI, we're going to be the best at content marketing. What are they actually adding on top of OpenAI, on top of this model, that actually gives them like a proprietary edge to be better at content marketing? Is it exclusively the way they brand themselves and tell the story of Jasper? Or is there actually something technical that's creating a moat for them? I guess that's my question, is like, for these vertical businesses that are drafting off of these large language models, what are they actually doing to be on a perch?
Well, we could brainstorm. I mean, if you and I were doing it, what would we do? Like, I think some of it's marketing and positioning. I think there's probably a huge usability. Like I've used their tools, and like you sit inside of them and you feel like they're built for a marketer.
Yep.
Okay, here, compose an email, make a Facebook ad. They already know the characters you need. Like these little UI UX things that are annoying if you're OpenAI because you don't want to deal with.
There are just too many use cases to.
Yeah, you're
account for all
like
these
how many
things.
characters does each different thing
Yeah.
have? So they make it. And then I think the last thing, I don't know if it's technical or data is probably a better word, is I believe that they are going to use marketing-oriented data to tune the model.
Yep.
I think that's another thing maybe to unpack. People don't realize, like, OpenAI is a technology. It reads information and then produces an output. You can change the information you put
Yep.
into it. So you can tune the information to be medical terminology if you want, or marketing terminology, or banking terminology. And so it itself is really a technology layer, and then you can mix in those different pieces of it. So I think there's going to be an explosion of ideas in businesses, and I think it's going to
wild.
create a new industry for sure.
Well, so how do you then think about if you were to go build something that is enabled by AI, and you just see this absolute explosion of businesses being built? I think part hype cycle, part because it's just easier to build these things than ever before. How do you decide what lane you're picking for yourself? Like, yeah, if you had to come up with an idea and go build something, where would you start?
Yeah, well, my answer is going to start with my unfair advantages, but I
Yep.
think for the sake of fun, like I just think the first way I actually thought about it when I first thought about this question was like, what do I want? And like the number one thing I want, dude, is I want a travel planner that's like AI. Hey, I'm going to Turkey June 2nd to the 11th. I'm going with my kids, my wife. Here's a city. Like, here, tell me what to do, and give me some options and make it really easy for me to talk to. So that was like a random. I just like wrote up a little business plan for that idea.
Yeah. Okay, so just taking that idea for a second, the first thing that I asked myself, because I feel like it's going to be so easy to bundle AI into everything now, for that idea, why do you need AI?
I think the ability to aggregate the data and let it make like personalized recommendations to you, and the chat, like the GPT-3 has been around for 3 years.
Yeah, which is wild.
Chat GPT changed the game.
Yep.
Why? Because it's, again, like the classic user interface thing, just like,
It integrated with people's behavior.
but like, dude, if you go back 30, 40 years ago, graphical user interfaces were there. Then you added the mouse, and they became a really compelling thing.
Yep.
So, like, to me, there is that element of the chat aspect of it, which is like, it feels so natural. So I think that's why it would help. But I think the ability to aggregate and customize outputs and responses is super powerful to kind of go, because the reality is, if you were going to Turkey and I was going to Turkey, if I could simply tell one thing and then get the entire day by day trip built for my family, like I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. You have no children, right? Like
Yep.
our days and the hotels
should
we
look
stay
different.
at, they should be very different.
Yep.
And you can either talk to a travel agent to do that, and that's okay, or that's it. Or you can like look at TripAdvisor and make your own version of that.
Yep.
Which is kind of what most people do today. Is like we read the internet, we're like, oh, okay, that one's good for kids. Like my wife will like solve for like she'll search on TripAdvisor for kids.
Yep.
Family oriented. You would never do that. And then
Totally.
she'll go, oh, this hotel's not good for kids, Jesse. Okay, well let's pick this other one then. And that feels like an automation layer that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I
without
think,
AI.
again, taking more like specifics to it, like if you could basically feed it, what is your budget for the trip based on what it knows to be the money that you have in the bank that you're willing to allocate to vacation spending.
Yeah.
And then it can compare that to your whole itinerary for like, how would it basically like use up that money in the most efficient way possible for what you deem fun.
And what activities your family likes versus you may have, you're a skier, I'm a beginner, I like playing tennis. And again, I don't think we can overstate the fact of the interface. Like someone told me once, like in 20 years, when we show maybe my kids or my kids' kids the keyboard, they're going to go, what?
Yeah. You're actually punching keys?
You were randomly typing into some strangely created thing to get the information from your head into the computer, and then you're reading something to get it back to you versus like Jarvis.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a big thing of just like, to do, you'd have to answer a 50-question survey to get to the level of specificity for travel that in a very natural conversation, either maybe audio or verbal and audio, but you just like, hey, I'm going to Turkey. Oh, that's great. Like, what would you like to do there? who are you going with? Here's a family. What dates? What types of things do you like? And that natural feeling, I think, is a game changer.
So I think, and by the way, I think the other really cool thing that can be done leveraging AI and automations is the integration to other things that you need for your trip. So for example, my fiance and I are going to Africa. There are a lot of things we need to do before going to Africa. We need to apply for our visa.
Right.
We need to order bags that fit on inter-Africa flights because you can only have a certain size bag. We have to go see a travel doctor for malaria shots. What if all of those things can be scheduled or ordered or worked on as part of that service?
Yeah.
So how would you monetize this? If people start using this, what's the way that you would extract value?
Travel is an interesting vertical from what I understand, and I'm not an expert in travel. The reason that, by the way, travel, like if a new technology called the internet were invented and you were just to do like the matrix of industry size versus monetizability, there's a reason some of the first companies ever started on the internet were online travel things because they're massive verticals. I mean, the trillion.
Everyone travels.
But they're huge verticals. They're hyper competitive verticals. And so like the picks and shovels businesses were the earliest ones to start. And so the nice thing about it, the way when like Hotel Tonight or Hotels.com, so airlines don't pay shit out in terms of margin, is what I understand. They may give you $5 if you get them a ticket.
Which is wild.
They don't make any money.
Yeah.
Hotels pay 25% to this day.
That's insane.
So if you get a hotel booking, you as a travel agent, whether you're online, whether you're a physical person, get 25% of the booking, which is why I'm sure they've contacted you and they're contacting me, these high-end concierge travel guys. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to book $10,000 of hotels for you. They get $2,500 for the hotel.
Totally.
So to me, if you make it an amazing service, people love it and use it, you make a ton of money via the hotels, essentially.
Yeah, so it's an affiliate-based business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same as the online travel agencies or any of them. And by the way, I think there's even layers where you don't even need the direct relationships to start. You could get maybe 10 or 15% up front if you just built a great tool on top of it. And then I'm trying to think of other ways you could car rental, like all these ancillary services you could
you just take small pieces of every type of transaction that's happening in the travel process.
And hopefully you become, you could even start it as a high-end service only.
Yep.
So every single customer you go through gets it. Now, the hard part about that business, the reason is even me, customer acquisition expert, like acquiring customers for that business and like retaining them, it's just I think it would take a lot of capital to get it going.
When you say retaining them, are you saying just because you don't travel that often to get someone to continue to use your service with 6 months, 8 months in between is just a hard proposition?
Yeah, I think building a good product would take you a year plus to even get to the point where people would get on it and use it. And then you have to be the thing, like there's all these other hotel sites. People have, travel is a pretty, you probably have your favorite sites to use. I have my favorite sites to use. Like people already have their way of doing it. So the behavior, it's like the classic 10x better. It has to be that much better of an experience. What could be more interesting is, again, you talked about this, but maybe you start a concierge travel agency powered by AI. So you could talk to someone, but they're not actually doing any work in the background. They basically are using your little internal bot to do the booking.
100%. So your idea made me think about an idea that I'd written down. And I wrote down this idea after seeing this video on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it. This guy, I can't remember his name. We'll link to the video in the show notes. But he basically built a tool where he integrated ChatGPT with a computer vision tool such that he first asked ChatGPT, what is a keto diet? And it spit out what a keto diet is. And then he said, can you tell me what is keto friendly in my refrigerator using my phone? He took his phone, he scanned his fridge, and it told him exactly what ingredients were keto friendly. He then said, using those ingredients, tell me a number of recipes that I can make that are keto friendly recipes. And it did the whole thing. So then I thought to myself, what is something like a real pain point that I've gone through recently that could do something with a similar pattern? And what I got to was personal styling and shopping.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're not in person together a lot, but I don't wear dressy clothes that much anymore. I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt. So for me to figure out matching my jeans to my jacket to my collared shirt took 30 minutes and my fiance's help. And so what I thought to myself is, what if I can scan my whole closet. It takes inventory of everything that's in my closet. It offers recommendations of, based on what's in my closet, what are things that I can match together today. But then also, it integrates with the web, and it integrates with where if I go to a retail store, I can scan what's in the store, and it will tell me, based on my style that I've worn in the past, what works well with my style, but also if I buy something in that store, what are things in my existing closet that it goes well with? And then when I'm shopping online, same thing. If I'm on Lulu's site or if I'm on Vuori's site or whatever site it is, Brooks Brothers, it tells me on their website
Right.
what are the things that will go well with my existing closet. So it's personal shopper / stylist.
Yeah. And get you the coupon codes.
Exactly.
So you can compete with Honey. No, I love that. I mean, all these things, like funny, these are cool ideas, which, you have the list for them. But then it flips to like, well, what business would you start or would I start?
Yeah.
And a lot of it for me is like all the businesses I'm running, I'm trying to find ways to integrate using AI, which I actually think is frankly going to be the more powerful version of it. It's
Are you integrating at all yet or no?
Yeah. So all the code for Kahani is written with Copilot.
Really?
And that's gone on for quite a while.
Yeah.
And like, it's mind blowing to watch someone program with Copilot.
I remember you told me like your CTO was just like,
He was just like, oh, this is what I would have written. Oh, this is better than what I would have
Yeah.
written. And like, it's just figuring it out for him, which is sort of crazy. We use it for Unbloat, for like copy and email writing.
have you trained your growth assistants in it yet or not yet?
We're working on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That business is growing fast. So they're just slammed. But yeah, the idea of like bringing that into the market. And we've had a couple agencies contact us and even one of my former employees saying, can you take we need someone to train all the growth assistants on it, right? And that's just a lift. But I think there's going to be, your business is a good one to talk about. Like you or I might start, and maybe it's an AI agency, or maybe it's like, again, you're doing this copywriting thing powered by AI.
Yeah, so I have an idea for how it's used within that business, but also how a product is built out of that business that can be sold separately. So just, I guess, for everyone listening, 4 weeks ago, I tweeted this idea of a ghostwriting, and this isn't a novel idea. I just thought I had an unfair advantage because I know what good content is. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know a lot of ghostwriters. A ghostwriting agency where people pay $8,000 a month. I pair them with a great ghostwriter who creates a tweet and a LinkedIn post every day, and then a thread and a long LinkedIn post every week. And the whole idea is that we're doing this for executives and CEOs now. The business today is at 26K MRR after 4 weeks.
Hell yeah.
And it's literally just from people in the DMs and me pairing them with ghostwriters. I have not built any of the processes yet that need to exist. But one of the big issues with this business that I foresee is it's not going to be a demand problem. It's going to be a supply problem, which is there are tons of ghostwriters, but I think there's a very small minority that I would feel comfortable creating the content for our clients that would actually perform.
Right.
And so then my issue is that makes it a scaling problem. Well, if the typical ghostwriter can only cover 4 clients typically, how can I extend that to 15? And so it got me down this path of what does it look like if I had an AI-enabled system where every client had every meeting they have and every voice memo they leave basically hooked up to a full content system where the meeting is recorded, any voice memo they create is recorded, it's turned into a transcript, that transcript is then turned into social posts, and then only then the ghostwriter gets basically the first draft or even a second draft of those posts and refines them. So they're not involved in account management, and they're not even involved in like the brainstorming initially. And so I thought, ultimately, can this extend the ability of ghostwriters to way more people? But also, can that be a product in itself? Can I basically build up an offering on the side that almost is a hedge if content is going the way of being AI enabled and my agency isn't necessary in the future, where I'm offering, hey, Jesse, you can sign up for our service, and basically all of your really cool experiences in life are going to be easily documented, and every time something is documented, it's turned into content that you can then pick from to refine and post.
Yeah. That makes sense. And also even I was talking to this guy who I've been working with, and I was like, the first thing you should do is interview me for 3 hours, like in detail.
Yep.
And then you could use AI and it goes like, well, we want to talk about a story where Jesse overcame a challenging obstacle. And theoretically, the AI should be able to read the transcript and say, hey, you should talk about that time you lost your big client because that's something you mentioned one time. And then that for me, like I was saying, like I need a tree of my own story.
Totally.
Where I'm like, okay, I can tell you this. We lost 40% of revenue one time. In December we had it, and by February we didn't. and I didn't know what to do. And I could tell you this whole story about that I need almost someone to know my story well enough that's not me to prompt me on that story.
Yeah, so that's something that I've noticed with this content agency so far is that, one, you want to pick clients who actually have interesting stories versus come up with inauthentically interesting stories.
Right.
But the second is most people with amazing success or crazy stories, they don't deem them to be all that interesting or crazy, or they forget about them. So actually, like, your most important job is literally triggering their memory.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say this is what you can do tomorrow, but like imagine if actually this AI was integrated with your actual business.
Yeah.
And so it can look at a day that you got crushed or crushed it with unbloat and said, tell me about this day. What happened?
Yeah. Well, I think I've been trying to find more creative ways to do it. And I think there's something like, most of my calls with Carolyn, who's the CEO, there's a lot of teaching going on.
Yeah.
Right. And there's like, she has certain questions or she's approaching something in a certain way. And I go, well, what if you did it this way instead? Or here's a concept you probably didn't know. Here's how you could apply it here. And so it's like, shit, I should record those.
Totally.
Because, with the right editing and the right orientation, those could literally be a course on how do you launch and scale a brand today in today's environment, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and the whole idea is, it reminds me of like the Gary Vee content pyramid, where you always start from like the longest form content and then break it down into micro content. It's what David Perel talks about also, which is like start from a place of abundance rather than starting from a place where you're like trying to rack your brain for an idea. The draft of every idea is in front of you, and you get to pick which one you want to refine down into the final thing.
Yeah. Well, so what are you going to integrate AI with the business?
Yes, I want to. Well, so this goes down to, I tweeted this yesterday, and then you replied to my tweet about like what the priorities of the agency are right now. So basically, just for full transparency, this is basically a business that is as close to being not a business as it is a business. We have revenue. The company hasn't been incorporated. There's no logo. There's no process. The initial ghostwriters, like I wasn't even taking a profit for the first 2 clients. I just wanted to learn the process. So I connected the ghostwriter with the client, and the ghostwriter individually invoiced the client. So I was just brokering this. So now I have to create some structure. So I was writing down priorities. One was like, have some structure so this can actually be an agency. 2 was find more ghostwriters so that I can scale outside of this one ghostwriter I'm working with. And the third was find an operator to run this business. And your reply—
I hate the word operator, by the way.
I can
for
tell,
the record.
I know. And I can tell by how you replied to the tweet.
Well, people use that word, and I'm an operator. You're an operator. Like, what the hell does that word? I hate that word. I hate it with a
Why do you hate it?
It's a douchey word that investors made up to delineate themselves from the person running the business.
Yeah.
And whatever, I don't know why I actually care that much about this, but I just find I almost find it to be like, oh yes, I think when like people use it in a way, oftentimes I've met investors who are like, operators are amazing, like they're unique animal, but I've also heard it as like
it's almost a way of like just referring to them as like a second class citizen.
Yeah, just find an operator.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
And no, it's that's the whole thing. But even like when I think about the people I want to partner with, they're partnerships and they're people who can learn. We'll learn from each other. We'll do different things. But I am an operator.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to, I want to consider myself anything different than that. And so I just find the word strange. But I think your number one priority, dude, is you got to find someone.
Crypto conversations are too often about who's up and who's down and all of the drama on Twitter. But most conversations about crypto miss how it's going to change everything, which is why I recommend listening to the brand new podcast Validated from the Solana Foundation. Each week on Validated, host Austin Federa pushes aside hype cycles and financial advice to bring you conversations about the biggest ideas shaping the internet. Look, when it comes to blockchain, the thing people talk about most, the price, is actually the least interesting part, which is why Validated stands out, because it explores the philosophical and technological questions about cryptocurrency, NFTs, DeFi, and beyond, all while sharing stellar perspectives from some of the world's leading Web3 journalists, analysts, and experts. So whether you're a technology enthusiast just beginning your crypto journey or already active in Web3, don't miss out. Follow Validated on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and let them know I sent you. Let's hear it for the little wins, like holding a yoga pose for a few seconds longer than last time and realizing your own strength. This summer, Think wants to help you accomplish even more by fueling your mind and body. Think is helping you transform positive thoughts into positive action. Boost your mental and emotional strength by joining their Stronger Than You Think series on Instagram and TikTok. Connect with other like-minded people through virtual yoga, guided meditation, and daily mindfulness practices, and treat yourself to thoughtful nutrition with Think's high-protein bars. Follow the Stronger Than You Think series for your chance to be featured on Think's social channels. You could even win samples of new Think bar flavors, high-protein brownie crunch, and keto chocolate peanut butter pie. Get started at strongerthanyouthink.info/thecrazyones. That's strongerthanyouthink.info/thecrazyones.
So this new business we're launching.
Yep. Where is it at right now in like the...
We just incorporated it. We're getting the bank account open. Like, I think we will have revenue next month.
Is there a name?
Yeah, it's
Can you say
called
the-
Ox Insights.
Okay.
Ox is another word for growth.
Yep.
So it's growth insights. But so we, this woman, Casey, I've known her for 4 or 5 years. We worked with her briefly at Ampush. They were a client. Her and I take walks every quarter, catch up about things. And she came up through, she was a VC, then she did corp dev for this company, and then she became the CEO. So she's got a ton of deal experience, and the business was like a content and media business. So she's overseen tons of Facebook marketing stuff, as have I. And her, she was kind of ready to move on from her thing. And her and I took a long walk, and I was like, here's all my ideas. And I have, 15 ideas I walked her through, and I have them by vertical, not vertical, but by trend, thing that I think is happening in the world.
Yep.
And, I talked about, I think I've talked about this before, but the original idea was what I call Lambda School for Growth Marketing. Yep. So let's, build a courseware, let's recruit people into it for free, and then let's place them, and we'll make money by charging the companies.
Right. And she was basically like, I'm not the person for that role.
Initially she goes, that's the best idea of the list.
Yep.
And we went through. And we spent, a month validating it, talked to a lot of my contacts, a lot of growth assistant customers who I know they're CMOs, and we heard tons of demand for it.
Right.
I need more people who know this. I wish my own team knew it. Could you train? We found 3 different businesses just in talking to people about it. Mm-hmm. And then we started going, okay, what's the game plan? I said, you go watch what's out there. There's stuff on Udemy, there's Reforge. I was like, let's start to put together our sense for a curriculum. And during her conversations, she also talked to a few private equity firms. And, private equity firms, for those who don't know, they're the guys who buy out businesses in whole. And they were like, yeah, we need this training for our firm. We also need it for our portfolio companies.
Yeah.
And she kept gravitating towards it.
Also, sorry, just one question. Why does a private equity firm need training in growth marketing?
Well, let's get there, actually.
Okay.
That's a great question. So it's funny because I was like the classic, guy selling something at a store. And I started going, and, this was an important thing I've learned from coaching. I said, I'm reading between the lines here, Casey, but you don't seem energized by the teaching part of this. Mm-hmm. And she's like, she's like, I know this stuff pretty well, but I don't get excited by teaching people. And I was like, oh, okay, well, one thing I've learned is that if we have to marry our unfair advantages in a very meaningful way. And I was like, so what are some of yours? Or why are you gravitating towards this? And she goes, well, I know how these people work. I know how they think. I've done deals. I've bought businesses before. I worked at a VC. And so I go, it's funny you say that. I have another idea. And I have this piece of paper I pulled out. And I'm like, here's the idea. And the idea is, there's a pretty big cottage industry of what's called private equity due diligence. So, for example, when Ampush was being acquired, I'm sure the same is true for you guys. Deloitte got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to analyze our accounting and our financials. Mm-hmm. And, it makes sense. You're about to buy a company for tens of millions of dollars. You're like, hey, we'll spend a couple $100,000 to make sure their accounting is not BS, that they've collected everything correctly, their balance sheet's not a lie.
And I assume the reason that the private equity firm doesn't have that knowledge in-house is because it's not like they're doing deals every day, so you don't necessarily need that competency in-house all of the time.
Yeah, and maybe the bigger they get, bigger firms may have more of those competencies, but even accounting as a thing, it's a little bit better to let it live there because it's kind of arcane.
Yep.
What they need is more arcane than is their core competency, right? And then, Bain and McKinsey both have 9-figure plus businesses in a slightly different form of due diligence. I actually worked on them when I worked at McKinsey. Back in the day, KKR was buying Bell Canada. Mm-hmm. It was at the time, it was a $40 billion trend, largest PE thing in history. And I spent 6 weeks in Toronto and I had to build a financial model that was able to take all the pricing data from every single carrier in Canada and within any like range of budget predict who was going to be more or less expensive. So I built this financial model. It took me like 2 weeks working 80 hours a week. And they used it to basically make assumptions about their investment that were super, super critical.
Yep.
Right? So the reason I wrote this idea, so the idea was let's help private equity firms do specifically digital marketing, growth marketing, diligence. And the reason I had the idea is because I'm not kidding, every month one of my friends from one of these firms who I went to college with goes, hey man, we're about to buy this business. It's a $200 million business. You know, their P&L is $150 million, and more than $50 million, or more than a third of their P&L is being spent on digital marketing.
Yeah, we need to understand this.
We can't tell if they're amazing. Is it a risk? Is there opportunity? Is there whatever? And I always was like, at Ampush, I was like, yeah, we don't do that. You know, I'll look for you as a friend. And I'd spend an hour and I kind of give them a couple things to think about. And even, but the second she started going, I go, hey, there's this other idea. What do you think about this? And she's like, that is me. She's like, I love being the investigative person. Like, I like to put together puzzles. I like to, go deep into different things. And so within, after a month or so of diligence, we sort of said, no, let's go pursue that.
Yeah, and again, this seems like very much within just like what you know super well. Like same thing with Growth Assistant. Like it wasn't a problem you had to think about if it's a problem. It's like a problem you have felt and you have heard about.
I know there's
years.
Demand for it, and like it needs to be. And then like, the McKinsey, just to give you a sense for pricing, charges $600,000 to $1 million per project.
Oh my God.
For like 4 people for a month.
Yeah.
And so you can just imagine the margins and the way that business. We won't be able to charge that much, but like, it's totally worth it. And like the other, we actually had a couple pitch calls with big PE firms, and like one thing I love about selling is what people say back to you that then you incorporate into your pitch. So an unnamed large cap private equity firm, this guy who's a friend of mine, he goes, McKinsey and Bain are too high level. They're hand waving when it comes to digital marketing. They're not tightly deep. They don't get it the same way. And the agencies out there are both too granular. They're not strategic enough, and they're very self-serving.
Yeah, so he's telling you how to market yourself.
He literally was like, so you're telling me you're going to be in between? You're not an agent. You're not going to sell us anything after the fact. I go, no, we're just here to do this. And he goes, you know this stuff, and you can translate it up so I can explain to people I'm in. And so, that's the business.
Okay, so you incorporated the business. You have this partner. What's the next step? Like, do you go and find clients now? Do you have to find...
Yeah, we have a name. We put together materials. We've started to kind of ghost out an example of how we would do this so that we ourselves know what it's going to take. I've lined up a lot of former Ampush employees who, like, the other thing is,
That's what I was going to ask. Who is the talent you're using to basically do the diligence?
Yeah, we have a couple full-time people we're going to bring on who we know are pretty good at this. And then we have like a huge network of consultants of every type, like every kind. So I have a Facebook expert, and she's, for $125 an hour, she'll go through all this stuff and prepare that part of it. I have a bunch of CMO friends, and we've already created a 10-person CMO expert network. So essentially one of the cool things we're going to do to differentiate is after we've done the 50-page diligence, one of these CMOs will review it and actually write a memo saying, as a CMO, now that I'm looking at everything, here's what I think is really, really important.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what you were saying your friend at the private equity firm was talking about. So you're sitting in the middle of these two things. You're going to have like the analysts from Ampush who are doing the deep due diligence.
Exactly.
But then like tying it together with kind of a strategic recommendation or view is how you use the CMO.
Yeah, and the core output we're going to do is like, think of the waterfall of like, here's where you're at right now. Here's what your goals are. Here's the big levers you want to pull. Now we've diligenced each current one, and we've told you the things that can actually allow you to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's another way to think about what I'm doing. This is like I always tell people, when you have an expertise, when you have something, go find the highest bidder for who's willing to pay for the stuff that you know.
Totally.
And so there couldn't be, I can't imagine, the only higher bidder, the only way I could monetize it further, which I will at some point, is like by owning parts of, like, owning stakes in these companies, and then being the guy who goes, here's the things you have to fix to make it better.
Totally. I could just also envision like you start with this like one work stream, but ways to expand the work stream over time as you're hearing from clients. What are other places that they experience the same problem with the diligence?
Totally. You're saying go horizontal.
Yeah, you're saying go more vertical.
I would go, like, to me, it's a beachhead now.
Yeah, so now you're saying, okay, this is where you see an opportunity.
Now we can launch the Lambda School of Growth, Mark. Oh, you need great people?
Yeah.
Well, we'll train them. Well, you trust us because we taught you what to do here.
Yeah, and that stays within what you know.
And then we think there's a data business opportunity. Like, if they all opt in to let their data be shared, like we could start to have this like consortium. I mean, there's a lot of, it becomes a big beach. And we talked to a couple of the firms about like, would you be open to us co-investing? And it's like, if one of these big baller private equity firms is doing a deal and we get to look at it and we like it, like absolutely.
Yeah, it's super
You could raise a fund against it. So, but I think anyway, that was a fun to tell that story live for the first time. I think one of the takeaways for you is like, who is that person? What is their unfair advantage? What is their genius? And also like,
how does it complement me?
Compliment and make sure that they have a genius like make sure the business is their genius, not the other way around.
I think that makes total sense. Honestly, I like in these discussions just these like almost like these weekly or bi-weekly updates on our businesses because it's like to me it just is a textured way of telling business lessons because we're just pulling out of these businesses we're building the shit that we're learning along the way.
Yeah, I think there's like technical parts to this we're gonna try to build. Like once we've done a few of these, we'll say like, what could a script do in terms of pulling the data and giving the base analysis? Can AI be helpful in this? Okay, how could AI be used? So maybe we not only show them what we think's wrong with their creative, but we use generative AI to do examples of, it might not be the exact creative they'll use, but hey, you're not using enough bright colors, enough urgency language. AI, hey, here's some examples of what we might use if we were you guys.
Yeah, the way I think about it is that at the simplest level, you're being paid a lot of money because basically anytime you scale up deal size, you can charge more money. Your wedge is showing opportunity in a given deal within your area of expertise. And once you've shown opportunity, it's basically how can you solve that opportunity yourself as a service for them in some way.
Totally.
I love it. Okay, before we sign off, we're going to do a Startup AMA. This is from Roger in Chicago. Roger asked, I was wondering, have either of you created an advisory board for your businesses, or do you know someone else who has? I would love insight into this as I'm looking into building one for my startup. What are your thoughts on building an advisory board and how to best use your advisors? What's your thought? Do you think they're stupid?
Yes.
God, the life like left your face.
No, I think it's a good thing to talk about because it's probably one of the most misunderstood parts of entrepreneurship. And it's, it's a co-created problem, in my opinion. And I
What
think
does that mean?
I think it's not on either advisors or entrepreneurs. They co-create a challenge, I think. And I guess maybe I'm like one of my many battle scars is like I would meet someone, they'd take an interest in me, I'd like them, I think they have something really distinct about them. Okay, hey, here's half a point of the company, like go help me, right? Not appreciating like where they break down basically is the entrepreneur is usually too busy to actually integrate the person in their workflow, and the person doesn't actually have enough skin in the game for them to like make it a priority on their priority list. And so I am not an advisor to anything that I don't have money into. Now I will put money into things and then say, hey, by the way, give me a bump and I'll make sure my LinkedIn's available to you or what are those kinds of things are there. But
so it sounds like your issue with advisory boards is not that advisors can be valuable to companies. It's the way that it is set up doesn't create nearly enough incentive for them to, on an ongoing basis, want to help you out.
For both sides. Like the advice I give people, even for myself, as long as I want you to be an advisor, I'm like, okay, let's decide that in 6 months.
Yeah.
I want you to ping me. I want to see if I make time for you. Do I actually care about you and your idea enough? I'm a busy guy, so if I don't make time on my schedule now, like I'm definitely not going to, after you've given me the thing. And then I want to see, do you make use of me? And can I actually have an impact on it? And it almost never turns into a relationship.
Same exact thing has happened for me, which is like the first time I was ever offered an advisory role, I took it. And I felt so bad a few months into it because I'm like, I have not earned my equity in this business and this feels really shitty. And, maybe it creates tension in our relationship now because they're like, why did I give this person any equity in the business? So now without fail every time, I don't say 6 months. I'm just like, let's just keep the conversation going and reach out to me, ask for help. And if I have deep interest in the business and you have deep interest in what I've provided to the business, then we can have that conversation. And I'd say to your point, like, 9 times out of 10 so far, it's led to like I didn't have nearly enough interest, which means they shouldn't be making me an advisor.
Yeah, so I think building an advisory board is one of them. I'd put it as one of the many distractions that entrepreneurs create to think that they're going to build a better business instead of just selling stuff to customers.
Yeah.
And I'd say if you know the person a really long time, if they have a ton of vested interest in you, if they're going to put money into the business, there's good reasons to do that. But I think the actual thing of building an advisory board is just a weird thing. Now, if you're going to be super diligent and schedule calls with them every week, and you're going to be really specific and
Isn't there a software that does that now? I forgot. There's some software that it's like all about you set up your advisory board, and it's like it helps you specifically.
Oh yeah. It's an intro thing.
Yeah, exactly, and it helps you with like CRM of like holding your advisors accountable.
Yeah, it shows you their network, how to leverage
like a
them.
C or something. Yeah.
So I think there's stuff like that. I think I would, instead of building an advisory board, what I've done and what I would recommend is, as you pitch customers, there will be invariably some customers, especially in B2B, who are like, man, this is a cool idea, or you're a compelling person. And I try to build deep relationships with those people. And then at some point in the first year, create some kind of like a client advisory board.
Yep.
And these are people who are your actual clients, and maybe no more than 3 of them. And then make sure you talk to them once a month. Here's what I'm seeing, guys. What do you think? And like, one of the coolest parts about building a B2B company in particular is there's a lot of people working at big companies who have startup dreams, and to see someone else doing it, it gets them really, really excited. And so that's more my jam. I generally would advise against advisory boards. Pursue lots of great relationships with people, and if you have a good one that lasts a long time, then maybe ask them to invest and give them a sweet deal along with the investment.
Yep. So I totally agree with you. 2 things I'd add. One is, it makes me think back to, so Morning Brew never had an advisory board. And there was a period of time where we were growing a lot, and Austin and I were like, we've never built a media business before. Like, we're starting to encounter problems that we feel like we have blind spots. How can we reveal those blind spots other than hiring senior leaders or people who have this experience? And so during that period of time, we met some like very legit media CEOs, names that you would know. And there was an unnamed media executive who we met with. We met with this person twice. We were like, okay, this person makes sense to be our first advisor because they've seen everything. And we asked them to be an advisor. They were in. And it kind of goes to the point of what you're saying, which is like, the advisor needs to like be so committed to the thing, or else like it's just going to break down. No. This person never signed their advisory agreements. Like, they just forgot to sign them. They would have cashed out at our deal, and they just never signed the agreements. And like the communication kind of just fell off because, and in some ways I feel like that's almost in a way how the system is supposed to work. But my big thing, and maybe you were alluding to this, is like, I think the best thing is you find people who have a vested interest in your business because they personally find it interesting, or they want to bet on you, and they're helping you for a while. Like, they are demonstrating help, you build a relationship. I almost view it like a mentor versus going and finding a mentor. Yeah. Someone is mentoring you over the course of your life, and then you find ways to give them upside because they've shown that they can create more upside if given more interest. Yeah. One maybe slightly unpopular thing I'll say is, it's anyone who's worth being an advisor probably should have $25,000 to $50,000 to put into your company. Yeah. Right. If they don't, if they're like, no, I just give me the advisory shares. I don't want to put 25K and 50K in. I'm a little skeptical of that. Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking in my head, like, where does your argument break down? And I was like, I'm thinking about like some of these really great young hustler employees from Ampush who are unbelievable growth marketers. Wouldn't that person be a great person to like be an advisor in terms of growth marketing? But then in my head, it's like, they could just be a great employee. Yeah. I mean, they could be great advisors, but I think that they would have a breakdown also of like where the founder would leverage them or not. Yeah. Like John has done it. I think he's done well with it. He's a CEO caliber person who knows this stuff. Yep. It's tough, man. It's. I'm not saying no, like never no, but I think like basically, I think there's better use of your time most of the time. Yeah. I agree. Well, this was awesome. We finally got to do this live in person. Love it. It's only been, I don't know, how many episodes have we done at this point? Way too many to have almost a year. Yeah, it's crazy. So a year in, we finally are in person doing this show. It felt great. And thank you all, as always, for listening to or watching The Crazy Ones, best startup show on planet Earth. If you have any topics you want us to cover on an upcoming episode, shoot us an email at thecrazyones@morningbrew.com, and we will catch you all next week. Take it easy, everyone. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of The Crazy Ones. If you're an entrepreneur or a builder and want more great startup content, make sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.